us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2, confirmation of minutes. Senator Ariana Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, the 23rd, and Monday, the 27th of March, 2023, be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the minutes of Thursday, the 23rd, and Monday, the 27th of March, 2023, be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President.
Messages?
No messages, Madam President.
Thank you. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. I would just like to inform the Senator that we've had apologies from Senator Lindsey Simmons, who's not feeling well, and Senator Vice President Kieran Bell and Senator John White, who are both overseas. We have another announcement in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, Junior Minister for Economy and Labor. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam President. I hereby present for the information of the Senate, the Ministry of Economy and Labor Reform Initiatives 2023, Strengthening Social Protections for Bermudians.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Item number 6, notices of motion. We have a motion that's also in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, Junior Minister for Public Works. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Madam President, I move that Standing Order 71-2 sorry. It's the notice of motion. I hereby present for the consideration of the Senate the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Senate, in accordance with the provisions of Section 8 of the Baselands Development Act 1996, approves the dissolution of the Bermuda Land Development Company, BLDC, so that it may be amalgamated with the West End Development Corporation, Redcoat. I give notice that at the next day of our meeting, I will move the said resolution be approved.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Item number 7, petitions. There are none. Item number 8, statements. We have 2 statements, and they're both in the name of Senator Minister, the Honorable Owen Darrell, the Minister of Youth, Culture, and Sport. Minister Darrell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the first statement I'll read is entitled the Sports Investment Program Allocation. Madam President, the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation is committed to enhancing sport and recreation at all levels and recognizes that sport association must be supported to ensure their growth and development. A key focus is to assist our national sports governing bodies in developing sustainable and effective pathway structures to facilitate an increased number of participants and improve performance. In this regard, the department commits to funding national sports governing bodies through the Sport Investment Program. The Sport Investment Program provides funding to national sports governing bodies to support and assist with developing athletes, coaches, and sports programs. There are principles guiding our investment decisions, Madam President, and they inform planning and decision-making impact, how we operate and communicate, and set the context for improvement. To this end, Madam President, the department has invested in the following categories for the 23-24 budget cycle: high-performing athletes, junior development programming, and coach development. Madam President, I will now outline the sports investment program allocations for the 23-24 budget cycle. Firstly, Madam President, the Bermuda Basketball Association. A sum of $15,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Basketball Association in support of the following: junior development program, men's, women's, and youth 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, and youth camps, $10,000 for coach development, and $5,000 for level 1 coaching. Bermuda Bicycle Association. A sum of $60,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Bicycle Association in support of the high performance elite championships and under 23 racing, and it's $40,000. Junior development programming is $20,000. The Bermuda Boxing Federation, a sum of $25,000 has been allocated to Bermuda Boxing Federation to support high performance and junior development programming. The Bermuda Cricket Board, a sum of $170,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Cricket Board in support of high-performing athletes, which includes hosting and preparing for the ICC T20 World Cup qualification tournaments. The Bermuda Equestrian Foundation, a sum of $25,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Equestrian Federation in support of junior development and programming, coach development, and high performance. The Bermuda Football Association has been allocated a sum of $300,000 and has been recommended that it is in support of the following: high performance, which includes a national academy, national team representation, and FIFA referee pathways; junior development programming, which includes the youth leagues and girls football development; and coach development, which includes the national academy coach development and referee education. The Bermuda Golf Association has been allocated a sum of $10,000 and has been allocated for the junior development or assistance with community sports initiative and golf in school program. The Bermuda Hockey Federation has been allocated a sum of $25,000 in support of high performance as well as coach development. These expenses associated with equipment and national squad preparation, as well as Sportsways partnership coaching course. The Bermuda Karate Association has been allocated a sum of $20,000 in support of junior development and the fees associated with WKF affiliation and junior development, coach development, which includes a coaching seminar. And this is the first, Madam President, sports investment program allocation for the Bermuda Karate Foundation. And I'd like to congratulate them on this achievement. The Bermuda Lawn Tennis Association, a sum of $25,000 has been allocated in support of high performance, which is the national training program, junior development, which includes the under 12 and under 14 development representation, as well as coach development, which includes ITF umpire and linesman courses. The Bermuda Motorcycle Racing Association has been allocated a sum of $10,000, Madam President, in support of junior development, assistance to junior riders to compete overseas. The Bermuda Olympic Association has been allocated a sum of $100,000, Madam President, to assist specifically with operational cost. Additionally, a sum of $100,000 has been allocated to assist with Elite Athlete Assistance Fund. Madam President, the Bermuda Paralympic Association has been allocated a sum of $25,000 in support of high performance to support 3 athletes participating in the Pan American Games. Funding will also assist in supporting staff travel. The Bermuda Rugby Footballers Union, a sum of $5,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Rugby Football Union in support of the following: coach development as well as participation at the World Rugby Level 1 and Level 2 coaching courses. Bermuda Sailing Association, a sum of $50,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Sailing Association in support of high performance, expenses associated with sending a team to the youth championship, junior development programming, which includes high school sailing in partnership with the Endeavor program, and the ISAF coaching training. The Bermuda Sand Shower Association has been allocated a sum of $20,000, Madam President, in support of high performance, which is expenses associated with participation in the World Wushu Championships, junior development, expenses associated with the participation in the Pan American Kung Fu and Tai Chi Championships. The Bermuda Sport Anti-Doping Authority, also known as BASADA, has been allocated a sum of $586,000 to assist specifically with their operational cost. The Bermuda Squash Rackets Association, a sum of $10,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Squash Rackets Association in support of the following: high performance, which is expenses associated with international training and competition, junior development programming, as well as the Bermuda Triathlon Association, Madam President, has been allocated a sum of $20,000 in support of high performance, expenses associated with participation in the World Junior Championships, the CAC Games, as well as the Pan American Games. Their junior development program, expenses associated with overseas competition for development squad and bikes for junior program, as well as coaching development for overseas development. The Bermuda Volleyball Association has been allocated a sum of $25,000, Madam President, in support of high performance, expenses associated with the under 23 and the Norca beach tours, coach development, partnership coaching course. The Gymnastics Federation of Bermuda, Madam President, has been allocated a sum of $20,000 to also assist with high performance and expenses associated with the national team as they prepare for participation in the CAC Games, as well as junior development, which includes a club and public school outreach. The National Archery Association of Bermuda has been allocated a sum of $10,000 to assist in the high performance, namely the Hyundai World Cup shoot. And as you can see, Madam President, the increasing number of recognized national sports governing bodies bodes well for sport in Bermuda as organizations continue to show good governance and development. The Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation will continue to provide a transparent process for all national sports governing bodies to access funding based on the principles of accountability, equity, and outcomes. Accordingly, the government's deep commitment to sport will continue with this program and others to show, Madam President, that sport matters. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell, and you have a second statement. When you're ready, you can proceed with that.
Thank you, Madam President. The second statement is entitled Creatives Live. Madam President, the Department of Culture is continuously reviewing and adjusting their programs to ensure that their offerings are as responsive and possible both to the needs of Bermuda's creative community as well as their audience. One such example of this was the establishment of Creatives Live 2 years ago. Madam President, you'll recall that Creatives Lives was a program established in 2021 when entertainers, particularly musicians, were unable to regularly perform because of the pandemic. The Department of Culture recognized these challenges faced both by musicians as well as members of the public who wanted to enjoy music during this time, specifically live music, Madam President, which led to a monthly series of open-air lunchtime concerts on the steps of City Hall. Madam President, thankfully, we have moved on to a different social reality and are able to gather and experience Bermuda's talented performers as we once did. In response to this, the Department of Culture has changed both the focus and delivery of Creative Live to better support performing artists to cater to a wider audience. Madam President, in addition to shining a spotlight on Bermudian musicians, Creatives Live now also supports open mic sessions, with a focus this year on the popular Chew Stick movement, as well as theater and performing arts groups. Madam President, thus far this year, we've had the chance to feature the dynamic energy of the working title band, which performed at the Warwick Workmen's Club, and most recently, the ever popular Wall Street Band, who performed at the St. George's Cricket Club. We are looking forward to our Heritage Month partnership with Chew Stick on Sunday, May 28th at the Blue Waters Anglers Club. Madam President, I'd like to thank the hardworking staff of the Department of Culture, particularly Mr. Graham Maurer, who is responsible for organizing and managing the monthly Creative Live series. Madam President, I'd also like to encourage my colleagues, along with the general public, to support these events and by extension, Bermuda's vibrant cultural community. Our artists are a source of enjoyment and inspiration, not just during Heritage Month, but throughout the year. And both established performers as well as up-and-coming creatives always benefit from a receptive audience as they express themselves and hone their craft. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell, for these two statements. Moving on with our agenda, orders of the day. Item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. Senators, the following public bill has been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and is now read for the first time. Its title is the Companies Amendment Act 2023, and this will be taken up later in our orders of the day. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question period. Senators, you may now ask questions on the statements that have been delivered, and the first statement is the sports investment programs. Senator Smith, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning.
Good morning.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the minister for providing this particular statement. I believe that this is not the normal practice to announce the information for each of the sports. And I actually thank him for doing so because it gives the population understanding of the support that's given to sports annually. And it actually highlights the different sports and what they're going to be doing. I have a couple of questions that come from the statement. The first one on page 1, when the minister points out the 3 key areas for investment were high performance, junior development, programming, and the third one was coach development. I'm wondering if the minister can give us any thoughts on whether they had looked at officials and official training being a fourth option. I note that there's a couple of times within the total numbers that it's brought up that there are officials that are being trained. I believe it's in football and maybe one other sport. But most people will know that without having trained officials available, sometimes it's not possible to actually have the sports happen. And it's not always known that some of that training has to happen overseas, potentially in order to get to the level of certification that's needed. We have to have our officials travel in order to do that. So I know it's not in here today, but maybe it's something that they're looking at for the future that we could also be supporting our officials and officials training in a way that allows us to maintain the level of our sports. Madam President, I'd also like to ask a question on, I believe it's page, it's on for the Bermuda Olympic Association. Yes, it's on page 4 of the statement. If the minister can give us a breakdown of how the $100,000 is allocated when it comes to the assistance with the elite athlete program. And this is really just for the information, not the actual numbers that will be given, because that happens as the year goes on. This is more to give the public an understanding of how that money gets allocated, how many elite athletes are in that program, that there's levels within that elite athlete program that shows that this is how the government is going to support our elite athletes to reach their goals, specifically because this is the final year before the Olympic year in 2024. And finally, I'd like to ask a question from page 5, which is under Sports Anti-Doping Authority. The funding for that particular group is $586,000, which always stands out because it's the highest amount. If the minister can let us know whether there is any update on the illicit testing for drugs prior to sports traveling. So our national teams used to have to go through testing prior to traveling overseas. That program was suspended. So I'm just wondering if the minister can give us some information on the update on that and whether that suspension will have any impact on the overall funding for the sports anti-doping. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith. Leaders, your 3 questions you've asked. Would you like other senators to ask questions? Senator Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, I join with Senate Leader Smith in thanking the minister for bringing this statement. I think that investment in sport is absolutely fantastic, and it is good to see how and the commitments that the government is making to the various entities. The question that I have, I'm just curious to know if the minister can give us some insight into exactly how these entities were selected. It would be good to know what the criteria is, and as well as what the process is. So, do any of these entities have to, is there an application process? Are there set criteria where, the government reaches out? Like, what is the criteria for that? Also, I would like to know, how is performance measured in terms of, again, the recommitment to making the financial investment? So how are they, what are the principles that they are basing the investment decisions on? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker, for your 2 questions. Would any other senator care to ask questions? No, then it's over to you, Minister Darrell, to respond.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm trying to get through these questions as try to answer them. All right, so the first one from Senator Smith is definitely one that is becoming a problem with many sports, as he would well know, especially with one of Bermuda's most popular sports, which is football. As you've seen, Madam President, the Bermuda Football Association, and I'm not here to speak for them, but have had to resort to bringing in overseas officials for many games throughout the season. So the official term that we put that under, officials and official training, can actually be applied for under this section of coach development. So I know it says coach development, but we do accept officials, and training for officials comes under the coach development. But I mean, if that's a suggestion of breaking it out into 4 different categories, we can do that. We can take, just to make it cleaner and clearer, that we have 1 for coaches, and then we can make a 4th one for officials. So we do take care of officials and fund it, but I do take the point, and we look to adjusting and adding a category. Also, for the second question, the official breakdown of the Bermuda Olympic Association of their grant of $100,000. And I'd like to say publicly on record that the Bermuda Olympic Association do a very good job of being transparent as to who they give their funding to, and they break it down into different categories. I'm not going to, again, speak for the Bermuda Olympic Association, but in the public domain, they actually manage the $100,000 that we give them. And they actually, on their website, have broken down the elite athletes to different categories. So category A has actually 2 athletes in it. Category B has 8 athletes. Category C has 7 athletes. So again, this is all managed by the Bermuda Olympic Association. The category of athletes also depending how much funding an athlete can get. So that is a breakdown on that. I'm going to skip now I'm going to come back to Basara, but I'm going to skip because I think Senator Tucker's question actually ties into this when she asked, how do we reevaluate the funds and see if we kind of give their funds again. First and foremost, we'll talk about the process. The process is that we, the Bermuda, the Department of Youth, Sport and Recreation, mainly the sports officer, Mr. Jacon Adnis, I would like to give him a shout out here, as well as Mr. Maceo Dill. They actually meet at the beginning of the year. So the first official engagement that I actually attended was a meeting of the national sports governing bodies. And they go and they address the national sports governing bodies and make them aware that we will be putting out this sports investment program. They'll let them know that the applications are coming out. They will let them know when the deadline is. And they also will sit down and assist national sports governing bodies of going through and making sure they're compliant and filling out the application process. So that is the process. It's very transparent. It's kind of like on a grant form. I'm sure you've seen the government grant forms before. And it breaks down and you have to specify no longer be national sports governing bodies. And then they also give me a readout of which sports governing bodies did not apply. And it is very unfortunate that, there are some families that have youth or family members that participate in a particular sport, and that sports governing body, for whatever reason, does not apply. So that's the process. Now, Senator Tucker, you asked, how do we decide? At the end of year, financial reports are analyzed, and to determine if the NSGB reached the objectives for the funding that it was applied for. We have had, and you would have heard in the budget debate, we have had national sports governing bodies that have not met the objectives of the funding that we gave, and they had to give it back. So we do have national sports governing bodies, and we follow up with them and say, look, you asked for funding to put on a youth camp. We note that youth camp did not happen, and that, let's say, $5,000 would have to come back. So it's the department, I can tell you, do a very good job of managing this and holding everyone accountable. So I could give you another example. If a national sports governing body applies for $10,000 for coach education, and it expects 15 new coaches based on that coach education, it's expected that the NSGB will meet that objective. If they do, then they can say, hey, look, we met the objectives, and they can reapply for funding the following year. So I hope those answer Senator Tucker's questions. And going back to Basada, it is a large amount that goes to Basada, and it is for operations. So yes, some of that is salaries. Some of that is to board operations, and a lot of it is actually testing. We have, as you would know, one of the highest performing elite athletes in the world in some of our competitions. And although they don't get tested here, we have to actually fund for them to get tested wherever they are in the world. And that process, it can be in the thousands of dollars every time. Now, more specifically about the illicit drug policy, you are absolutely right. It was suspended about a year ago. We are still reviewing that. And WADA, you would recall I went to a WADA conference, that's a World Anti-Doping Association, have asked the Basada or the Bermuda, they call it a NADO, the National Governing Body, which is Basada here. They've asked them to look at the legislation on clean sport, I think, and they've asked us to make some adjustments. And in that act also includes mention of the illicit drug policy. So we're going to have to make those match, and you will hear more of that in the coming months. So we are working on it. As far as where it stands right now, it will still lay in the dormant phase.
You have a supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So I just need to get clarification. The illicit testing, did it not have a cost to it? Because if we've suspended it, what impact has that change had on the budget? Because we tested every team that went away prior to this, which meant that that was a significant amount of testing that happened, should have had a cost associated with it. So can the minister now let us know whether that adjustment has had an impact on the budget, or the budget's remained even though we're not doing the testing? If he could give us clarification on that. And secondly, a supplementary to the answer that was given, what I would say on the performance question that came from Senator Tucker, if the minister can just give us some clarification on how the ministry assesses high performance. How do they determine what that level of performance is in order to give the funding for the following year? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith. Those are your two supplemental questions. Senator Tucker, you have a supplemental or a third question?
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one supplemental question. And again, thank you to the minister for responding to my questions. I'd just like to get some clarity on exactly who or what body makes the selection. So when the minister was speaking, he did say, we. So I just wanted to know exactly who we is that makes the selection and the investment decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Madam President, the recommendation comes to the minister and the minister makes the final sign off. So me. As far as the Basada budget has remained, and we should be getting a year report very shortly, and I will review that and get that back to Senator Smith on how the budgets have been changed around based on the change in the illicit drug testing. As far as elite athletes go, elite athletes for each sport have a different criteria that is sent over to the department by the sports. For instance, I can take cricket, for instance, and you would recall that the Bermuda Cricket Board have been in the qualifiers for the T20 World Cup, and we have made the final round. So the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation actually define high performance as any athlete or sporting organization that is engaged in regional competitions and world level competitions. That is the starting point for high performing athletes. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrow, and that completes your presentation and the questions on your first statement. We'll now move on to the second ministerial statement entitled The Creatives' Lives. Would any senator care to ask questions on the second statement? Hearing none, then that completes the question period. We will now move on with our orders of the day. And the first order is the second reading of the Companies Amendment Act 2023, and that's in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister of Finance. Senator Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to request that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that I can proceed with the second reading of the Companies Amendment Act 2023.
Senator Sen, just before you start, can I just acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Vanus Memari, the Registrar of Companies? You're from the, oh, sorry, from the Registrar of Companies. Welcome to you. Senator Hudson, you can continue.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Companies Companies Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. The bill before the House is the Companies Amendment Act 2023. The aim of this bill is to make two sets of amendments. One amendment relates to the Companies Act 1981 and the Limited Liability Company Act 2016 in connection with digital asset businesses that wish to form an exempted company or exempted LLC in order to engage in business in Bermuda. The second amendment relates to the Companies Act in connection with the requirement to advertise the reduction of a company's share capital. Madam President, both of these amendments emanate from a request by industry to streamline statutory procedures, which are costly and equally important, which create inefficiencies, which in turn act as barriers to business and investment. Regarding digital asset business, an exempted company is the most suitable corporate vehicle to apply for a digital asset business license from the Bermuda Monetary Authority under the Digital Asset Business Act 2018. Currently, an exempted company, subject to certain exemptions specified in Section 129A of the Companies Act, is unable to carry on business in Bermuda unless the Minister of Finance grants it a license. Nonetheless, a Section 129A license does not permit an exempted company to engage in retail trade in Bermuda with any other person. The same restriction applies to an exempted limited liability company. Madam President, the Bermuda Business Development Agency's Technology Subcommittee and Legal Focus Group has advised that these restrictions do not lend themselves to digital asset businesses entering the Bermuda market. Two examples provided by the BDA are as follows. Cryptocurrency exchanges and trading platforms may be unable to permit Bermudian residents to trade on their exchanges, which is disadvantageous to Bermuda residents who are forced to utilize overseas exchanges. Fintech businesses, particularly in the payment service provider space, may be unable to provide services to Bermuda residents, meaning some of the proposed digital currency initiatives being promoted by government, such as the ability to pay taxes and government fees in Bermuda in digital assets, cannot be provided by the international businesses Bermuda is trying to attract. Madam President, we propose to remedy the restriction in Section 129A1 by amending Section 129A4 of the Companies Act. Section 129A4 exempts two types of exempted companies from Section 129A licensing requirements, namely an exempted company that carries on business, A, as an insurance manager or broker as defined in the Insurance Act 1978, or is registered under that act, and B, trust business as defined in the Trust Regulation of Trust Business Act 2001, subject to the circumstances specified in Section 129(4)(b). Madam President, the bill therefore proposes to amend Section 129A4 of the Companies Act to exempt digital asset businesses that are licensed under the Digital Asset Business Act 2018 from having to obtain a Section 129A license. Similarly, Madam President, it is also proposed that Section 24(1) of the Limited Liability Act be amended to exempt digital asset businesses licensed under the Digital Asset Business Act 2018 from having to obtain a Section 25 license. Madam President, regarding the second amendment in the bill relating to the requirement to advertise the reduction of a company's share capital, Section 46(2)(a) of the Companies Act prohibits a Bermuda company from reducing its share capital unless, not more than 30 days and not less than 15 days prior to the date of such reduction, the company publishes in an appointed newspaper certain details of the proposed reduction. Madam President, this requirement has been in effect since the Companies Act came into force in 1981. Section 46(2)(a) is no longer considered as providing any useful protection to creditors. There are three reasons for this. First, it is not the case now, if it ever was, that a company's paid-in or stated capital has any bearing on its ability to pay its debts. It merely reflects whether the full par value of issued shares has been paid and has no bearing on the financial situation of the company after the shares are issued and paid for. Second, it is doubtful whether the creditors are aware of this provision, rendering its use moot. This is particularly true of the creditors of exempted companies, the majority of whom are based outside of Bermuda. The bill therefore proposes to eliminate the requirement to advertise the reduction of a company's share capital. Madam President, with those brief introductory remarks, I now present the bill entitled the Companies Amendment Act 2023 and welcome comments from the opposition in support of this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCouto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Apologies for those squeaks. I was glad to hear some of the details from Senator Hodgson's, which did explain some of the thinking behind the act. As you know, Madam President, we of course received these bills without very much context. If we're lucky enough, we perhaps can listen to debates in some other places or apply some of our own thinking. So it's always helpful to get the explanations. I do have a lot of questions, and these changes they're obviously directly coupled to businesses under the DABA regime, or the Digital Asset Business regime. And I have a lot of concerns because it covers quite a wide range of companies. We use this word fintech, but it means a lot of different things. The senator mentioned, of course, exchanges, and that's one thing, but she also mentioned digital payments processors, and that's another thing. And they have very different, what I would call, risk profiles for our island. And one of the reasons that we have these regulations is, of course, to provide a sound environment for commerce, a well-respected environment, and the protection of our reputation in providing that environment, I think, is of the utmost importance for Bermuda and our future success. And unfortunately, some of our engagement with some of these companies has not been as beneficial for our reputation as we would like. And so I get a little concerned whenever we're removing checks and balances or opportunities for us to look carefully at these businesses. And I'm going to provide a few examples. We heard about Arbitrade and Victoria Hall. Now, what's funny about that one is that's going to turn into vertical farming, which, as you know, is another one of my pet topics here. But of course, at least this initiative will be private funds, so I wish them success. We know that company actually has allegedly left a prominent local law firm in the lurch for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we associated ourselves quite publicly with them, and not to our advantage as a jurisdiction. There's some that we've avoided. We've avoided that company FTX, which has left Bahamas not looking very good. But the question is, if that company FTX had come to Bermuda and had been operating here, would we have avoided the problem that happened in the Bahamas? And you can have all of the legislation and laws and procedures that you want, but that gentleman, by all accounts, and of course it's going to the courts in another jurisdiction, seems to have been a straight up criminal, white collar criminal, but a criminal no less. Do we have the resources, the right, are we really set up to deal with bad faith operators like that, as compared to, say, companies in what the insurance industry, which are here to, what I would call, play the long game, or the repeated game. The operators and individuals in that space are here to build lifelong careers, long-lasting businesses, and so they are what I would call operating in good faith. And of course, we've seen companies like Bittrex and Coinbase and Binance, and they're all in the newspapers with issues with regulators in the United States. And I appreciate your patience here, because what I'm trying to get to is, if we think about, let's say, a digital payments processor, that's carrying out a function that is clearly, it has a clear value of what they do, providing efficiency, transparent transactions, allow people to carry out the business better. But the exchanges is a different matter altogether. And my personal opinion is that they're enabling speculation. And I get very concerned when I see the companies that are basically seem to be in trouble with the regulators overseas coming to Bermuda to set up here. They'll say things like, well, we like the certainty of your regulations. And we do have good certainty in our regulations, but our regulations don't cover the sorts of areas that these people are getting into potential trouble with the United States. For example, the securities laws, because while we have a very robust environment here for the industries that work here, like insurance, we are not set up for like a securities trading environment. And so we have to say to ourselves, you know, we would like to attract, for example, I'll take an insurance company to Bermuda because of our regulator, but not because our regulator is leaving them alone for things that other regulators are on their case for, right? Let's go to the Bittrex, Coinbase, and Binance, which you can easily find out all the issues going on there. The insurance companies are coming in, not because of the differences in our regulator versus, but in fact, because our regulator is at least as strong as, if not stronger than, regulators in other jurisdictions, if that makes sense. So they're not avoiding a certain type of regulation in another place. They're coming here because our regulation is at least equivalent to, if not stronger. And while I want this fintech stuff to work here, as you know, some of you, I have a technical background, I have a finance background, I have an insurance background. This should hit my sweet spot of things I want to work. I am very concerned on what it's doing for our international reputation, which has been hard-earned, well-earned, and could be easily lost. So if I get to my actual really specific question, I'm a little confused about the share capital thing, because I want to understand if that was specifically asked for through these companies with the DABA thing, or is that something that has been bundled in here, for example, something that's been on the mind of the registrar for a while, that, you know, it's a bit anachronistic. I'd like to understand that. That would probably adjust how I feel about it. And I mentioned this thing about not all fintech being the same. I feel that we ought to have a little more granularity about the types of businesses that we are opening up in Bermuda. And I think I mentioned it, I'll say it again though, payment processing, anything to enable more robust commerce, more efficient commerce, that's great. Speculation in digital assets, that is frankly being frowned upon in, you know, our biggest neighbor jurisdiction. I'm not sure we need to open that up for Bermudians to fall potentially prey to. So those are my main comments, Madam President, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Takutu. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then we will await response from Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President. So a lot of the commentary made by Senator Takuda was commentary, and so I'll speak to the question asked surrounding the share capital. And so as was noted in the brief, the Second Amendment relates to the Companies Act in connection with the requirement to advertise the reduction of a company's share capital. And this doesn't just apply to the digital asset business, but actually to any registered entity. When we look at the changes, essentially it was becoming problematic given the need to advertise 30 days prior to, but there was no credit protection involved in that. So essentially the advertisement requirement of Section 46 has been in effect since the act went into force, and its purpose can be determined from the original makeup of Section 46, which actually included a requirement for 2 directors to swear an affidavit that on the effective date of the reduction, either the company is solvent or all creditors has expressed in writing their concurrence in the capital reduction. The requirement was intended to alert creditors of the company of the coming reduction and to allow them to prevent the reduction from taking place, which the act permitted them to do if at least 2 directors were not willing to swear that the company was solvent at that time. It is worth noting that subsection 46.2 was actually amended back in 2000, and that was intended to remove the affidavit requirement. And so even if creditors are made aware of the reduction, they were now able to take such action to prevent the reduction. So because the provision did not provide any additional protection to creditors of the company. Again, the advertising requirement is sometimes difficult to comply with. And we're essentially working to make the process, I guess, more attractive to businesses so that companies are able to conduct capital reductions on an expedited and essentially real-time basis. And so I hope that provides some clarity.
Senator Takuda, you have
I
comment?
do have a follow-up on that answer. I guess my question is that amendment connected to the digital asset business stuff, or is it something that the registrar has been, for example, had in mind to deal with for a while and would have done anyway? Thank you.
Madam President, I just did want to confirm that the timing was purely coincidental. There was a time that we were looking to make some amendments, and so we decided to push this one forward in addition to the First Amendment.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. With that, then you can carry on to move your bill.
Yes, Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Companies Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Companies Amendment Act 2023 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Companies Amendment Act 2023 be now passed. Is there any objection to that motion? The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Hudson and all senators for the support of the bill. We now move on to the next item on our orders of the day, and that is consideration of the following resolution that was read by Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister for Public Works. Senator Robinson, over to you.
Yes, Madam President, I ask that this be carried over to the next meeting.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. The bill will be carried over to the next meeting. That completes our orders of the day. We'll now move on to an item number 14, motions. There are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches. Would any senator care to speak? Senator Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam, excuse me. Thank you, Madam President. I want to start with condolences first. I have a few because we haven't met for a little while. So I'll try to move very quickly. I want to express condolences to the family of and friends of Mr. Charles Paul. I wouldn't say I actually knew Mr. Paul personally. I knew him enough to be able to have and to exchange pleasantries. I'm racking my brain trying to remember where I met him, and I believe it was at Work Academy when my children were there. But every time I saw him, he's such a pleasant person. And if people don't recall who he is, if you're from the West, he was most recently working on the roadsides near to Work Academy. Whenever he was there, you would always know that it was him doing the work because he took such pride in what he did. A very, very pleasant and very nice man. So I want to express condolences to his family, as well as to condolences to family and friends of Mrs. Margaret Caton. She passed away, I believe, sometime in April. I worked with Margaret. Margaret was knee-high to a grasshopper. I'm not much taller than her, but she was such a lady that was so full of life. I worked with her at Office Equipment, if you remember, way back when, Purpose Limited and all of that. I think I'm showing my age. But she had a sense of humor that was just crazy. Very, very pleasant lady. And so, you know, she'll be missed. Also, I want to express condolences to Renee Hill and the rest of the family of and friends of Mr. Hector Watson. I had the pleasure of meeting Hector maybe about a year and a bit ago when we went to Renee Hill Originals to get a wedding dress and some items for myself and the rest of my family for my daughter's wedding. And so Hector had such a keen eye for fashion. I mean, he picked out some things that, you know, I was like, wow, these are really great, like spot on. And some things I would say there were one or two that I think I'm a bit too young for, too old for, I should say. But he had really good opportunity to have nice conversations with him and all of that. Very insightful gentleman. And so, and condolences to his family. Also, I would like to express condolences to the family of Marco Warren. I think I think I'm fair in associating the entire Senate body with those condolences. And I would just like to add that if there is anybody listening or knows anyone that knows anything about what happened to Mr. Warren, I would please ask that you know, you consider his family and you know, let the authorities know if you know anything about what happened to Mr. Warren. And lastly, on condolences, I would like to express to the family and friends of Deborah Ann Bassett Nisbet. Deborah is my husband's cousin, so relative by marriage. And anybody that frequents St. George's would definitely know Deborah. She worked for several years at Frangipani, and more recently she worked at Robinson's. So again, condolences to Aunt Leonie, Patrina, and the entire family. I would like to say congratulations to North Village, who won the FA Cup in April after they beat out PHC. I won't say any more other than red and white were in the house and they have taken home the FA Cup. So congratulations to North Village crew. And lastly, I would like to also say congratulations to SCARS, the Center Against Abuse, and the Women's Resource Center for coming together to form a sexual assault survivors support group. A special shout out and thank you to Christine Jones for reaching out and bringing these charities together so that they can provide the critical services to this community in terms of having a support group for women. Survivors of sexual assault carry the burden and you know, carry the burden long after the assault has happened. And so I thank every one of these charities for coming on board and making such an important initiative happen. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak? Yes, Minister Owen Darrow, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as the Senator Tucker just mentioned, I'd like to extend my condolences to the family of Marco Warren. Also, like to associate the Shadow Minister of Sport, Senator Ben Smith, who also did publicly acknowledge condolences to the family of Mr. Warren. Um, I cannot say it any better than the members of Pembroke Hamilton Club PHC said a few days ago, and they said the only thing better than Marco's footballing ability was him as a human being. Um, Let me park that for a minute. Marco Warren passing hits very hard to the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation. Mr. Warren was a youth program supervisor as well as a community worker, both for the after school program as well as the out of school programs. Um, I had the opportunity to actually meet and talk to Mr. Warren, not in his capacity as a footballer, but as an employee of Youth and Sport. He was always part of the team as he was a supervisor planning the activities for the youth. The last conversation we had was actually a few days before the FA Cup final, which, as we know, he was unable to be a part of. And he was as humble as can be in the conversation we had at Garrison Field. They were having a sports youth community day, and he was a key member of the organizing team. And we had a conversation about it. And, you know, you would expect someone in that situation to be angry about the situation of which he found himself in, and that he couldn't play. And he was quite the opposite, very reflective, and even talked about, you know, kind of the steps that he was going to take to rectify some of the circumstances of why he couldn't play. So this news that we got on Sunday morning was devastating to the department, devastating to the ministry. Um, as you would know that you know it's a difficult time for the members of youth, sport, and recreation who have worked with Mr. Warren. I did have a chance to meet with them a few days ago, just to allow them to express their grief and condolences. But and I hope to meet with Mr. Warren's family sometime soon. But I do want to send those condolences on behalf of the ministry, the behalf of um, the department. And I'd like to double down on what Senator Tucker did say and appeal to anyone that knows anything about the circumstances of which he was tragically lost to please step forward sooner rather than later. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Would any other senator care to speak on the congratulations or obituaries? Senator Takuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I, of course, associate myself with all of the remarks regarding Mr. Warren, and I could not say anything better than has been said. So I'll move on from that. I did want to congratulate Andira Critchlow. For those of you who watch Netflix, put your hand up. I know that's everybody. She is in this new show there called Queen Cleopatra, and I believe she's a Bermudian and she's working in London, and I believe it's getting quite good reviews, and I would urge everybody to watch that. While I'm speaking of the Critchlow family, I would just also like to congratulate her brother Aaron, who is involved with the Bermuda is Love organization. And for those who are observing the amount of work that they're doing around the island to show people how to help, how to be part of making things better is frankly amazing, the breadth and depth that they do. And I just want to congratulate him as well. Not for any specific achievement, but just for the general program of him and that organization, and just remark on the impact that family is having on the world. And I'd also like to congratulate everybody who was involved in the Santo Cristo Festival. I was not able to attend, but I know that all the attendees and the Portuguese community were thrilled to get that back out in full force and to finally see it back in action. So congratulations to them and that community for being out there and celebrating that event. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Dukuto. Yes, Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to extend, well, first of all, I too extend the same condolences in particular to the Warren family, and may he rest in peace. I would like to give some congratulatory remarks for the 2023 agricultural exhibition that was held April 27th, 28th, and 29th. Knew it's been a little while, but we haven't met. And so, first of all, as most of us know, the Department of Parks held that event, and it had been the first time we've had an event like this in 3 years since we've been able to have it in person. Want to say that we actually sold over 10,000 tickets for the Ag Show this year, and it would have probably been more if it hadn't rained on that final day. As we knew, it did rain, and it stopped some people from coming. But in particular, I want to give note of congratulations and thanks to, first of all, the acting director of Parks, Mr. Remy Sabir, Ms. Georgette Keynes, Ms. Betty Conyers, Ms. Susan Conyers, Ms. Claire Russell, Ms. Carlita Lodge, Ms. Esther Lopes, Mr. Ronnie Lopes, Ms. Makisha Smith, Ms. Roseanne Mitchelson, Mr. Stephen Ananishan, Mr. Derek Seymour, and Mr. Paul Furtado. They were all part of the main planning team. And we also want to thank others, Ms. Kelly Souza, Mr. Roger Paris, Mr. Craig Bird, Ms. Joanne Smith, guest judges, and the entire Department of Parks staff for being able to put on this show with countless sleepless hours. And they all contributed at such a short period of time because, as we also had mentioned, that it was only in late January that the full responsibility of the Egg Show returned to the Department of Parks. So well done. I think the community really enjoyed the event, those who were able to make it. And again, well done to the Department of Parks for putting on such a wonderful event.
Thank you. Sorry, I was looking, I thought you hadn't quite finished. Thank you, Senator Leslie Robinson, and Senator Yo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to take this opportunity, since we last met, there have been so many members of our community that have passed, and we'd like to offer condolences to each family that has lost a loved one. And today in particular, I'd like to offer condolences and lift up the contributions of a few outstanding leaders that passed over the last few weeks. I'd like to lift up Major Randall Butler, who was a former aide-de-camp to two governors, Sir Richard Posnett and the Right Honorable Viscount Don Russell. Major Butler, he was also an avid sportsman, both as a player and captain of the Western Star Sports Club, and he helped them to win many trophies over the years. He also represented Bermuda as an umpire internationally, and he was acknowledged for his contribution by both the West Indies Cricket Umpire Association on their 50th anniversary and the Bermuda Cricket Board. Major Randall Butler, he was an outstanding family man who truly modeled what it meant to be an officer and a gentleman. His contribution to our community was invaluable, and he will be deeply missed. So we offer our sincere condolences to his wife and to his two daughters, Angeline and Dr. Melissa Butler. I'd also like to offer condolences on the passing of Cora Virginia Wilson, a member of the British Empire. She was a former member of St. Paul AME Church, but she was also the leader of the Hands of Faith ministry, which actually offered sign language in services and other events throughout the island. And she definitely was a trailblazer in that area, and she trained countless individuals. She also brought awareness to the needs of the hearing impaired. And we just like to certainly acknowledge her contribution to our community and offer our sincere condolences to her family and to all those have been touched by her life. The third person that I'd like to uplift is a gentleman, Mr. Willard Bo Birch. Mr. Birch, who operated a barber shop on Court Street. He was certainly an individual that contributed much to this community. He and his wife also operated a bed and breakfast on the North Shore Road, and you could read articles of the outstanding service that they provided and the addition that they were to our tourism product by making friends, offering service, and certainly showing that Bermudian hospitality. Mr. Birch, he inspired many young men by training them to be barbers, by providing a space for them to operate and build their own businesses. And we certainly are thankful for all that he was to this community and offer our condolences to his family as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Emily Dills. Senator Ariana Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I did just want to pause to celebrate Ms. Cornell Francis, who is the newly elected mayor of St. George's. I did just want to wish her all the best as she takes up this new role. I'm sure she'll enjoy being back in the saddle. And I would also like to pause to celebrate the committee, the participants, all of those who contributed to the Relay for Life event that took place this past weekend. It's always amazing to see us all come together to celebrate and to just enjoy each other's company, but to also reflect on all the work that is being done in Bermuda to support those who are being impacted by cancer. And I remembered reading that I believe 97% of the money raised actually goes back to ensure that everyone can utilize the Bermuda Cancer and Health Center so that they are able to provide these services to persons who wouldn't ordinarily afford those services. And as has been stated so many times this morning, I want to associate myself with the condolences to Marco Warren's family, to Aunt Wendy, Ms. Warren, his sisters, Chelsea and Ziana, and his father, as well as his girlfriend and his daughter, his son, sorry. I actually worked with him last summer, and he was so excited to be becoming a father. And so he was someone who believed that he could change the world, and he made sure that everyone who came into contact with him believed that they too could change the world. And so I would encourage more of us to be the light that so many of us need.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Would any other senator care to speak? No, then I'd just like to add my own couple of comments. Certainly, I would like to associate myself with all senators on the untimely death of Marco Warren, and I reiterate what the minister has said, that if anyone knows anything, please come forward, because that is such a senseless death, and we're sure that there is somebody out there who can come forward. So we just pray that they do. I would also like to associate myself, sorry. I'll deal with my own condolences. I would like to extend condolences to the family of Valerie Christine Pearman, the mother of Chesney Robinson, and her husband Wesley and their 3 children, also her sister Linda Manders, as well as the entire family. Christine was a nurse who worked for many years at the Mid-Atlantic Institute, and I had the good fortune of working with her for several years. I would like to also now move on to congratulations. Certainly, I'd like to associate myself with the congratulations that was given by Senator DeCuto on Ms. Critchlow, and congrats to the Portuguese community as well, Senator DeCuto, and associate myself with the agricultural exhibition, which certainly everyone had the opportunity to go enjoyed it. I would also like to congratulate the Nurse of the Month, Ms. Renee Falcon, who was selected as the Nurse of the Year here in Bermuda. She is a nurse lecturer at the Bermuda College. And I would also like to congratulate the Bermuda Nurses Association for the myriad of activities they have organized in celebration of Nurses Month, which is this month, and which included the reading of the proclamation by the Minister of Health, Kim Wilson, on the steps of City Hall last Friday. With that said, we'll now move on then to item number 16 on our orders of the day, and that is the adjournment. Minister Darrell.
Thank you, Madam President. I do now ask that the Senate do adjourn until next week, Wednesday, May 24th.
Thank you. Would any senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Senator Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to take an opportunity today to talk about a problem that I think is a huge problem in this country. And while I want to say from the outset that while we have huger problems to deal with in the country, the feral chicken issue in Bermuda is a problem that needs to be aggressively addressed. Since I made some statements in the media, the numbers of people who have made themselves known about this issue, who have made themselves known that this issue is an issue for them as well, is staggering. I've had people approach me in the grocery store, people to walk up to me on the streets, the whole 9 yards. While the government has acknowledged, the minister has acknowledged that everybody knows it's a problem, the question that I have is, when are we going to take some aggressive action to deal with it? I was a guest at the Grotto Bay a few months ago and was woken at 4:30 in the morning by chickens crowing, right? If I'm having that problem, certainly our guests are coming in and experiencing the same thing. Now, as I had mentioned once before in the media, I recognize that there are people that love chickens, and this is certainly not a slight toward them or an attack on them. However, it is an issue for those of us, and I am including myself, who are being impacted, because what I've discovered is that people tend not to care as much if they're not being impacted. The farmers care, Madam President, that chickens are eating their crops and they're losing money. The tourists that are coming here who are being impacted, as I was, will care. The people whose garbage is being pulled out, as we all know, we have one-day garbage collection, and they come and they find garbage all over the streets, and the chickens and the roosters and all that are pulling out all the garbage. They care. The garbage workers will care because they are the ones that are having to clean all this up. We have to take aggressive action. At this point, we could end up with more chickens than Bermudians in this country. It's funny, but it's the reality of where we are. It's a little problem, again, I want to stress, in comparison to all the larger issues that we have going on in this country. I acknowledge that. and I agree 110%. However, it is a problem that continues to grow, and if we don't take aggressive action to deal with it, it will be so out of hand that we won't be able to deal with it. So with that, Madam President, I want to just say that I am trying to do my part. And I will say this, that I do have a committee that I am proposing to provide the government with some practical solutions. We are brainstorming to get some practical solutions together to be able to deal with this issue. This, to me, Madam President, is one of the things, the action or inaction, and I'm not in any way suggesting that the government is doing nothing. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that it's not taken as aggressive, it's not being dealt with as aggressively as it should be. I understand there is a need for resources. I understand that there are some issues that are going on, but what are we doing about it? That is the question. I have not yet gotten a response as to what we are doing. We have a feral chicken management plan that is 2013. There are things in it, I've read it, there are things in it that, that are suggestions about what we can do. Clearly, we're not doing them because we're overrun with chickens. So with that, Madam President, those are my few minutes that I did want to take and just keep the conversation going because it is an important one. While it is not it is not as large of an issue as some people believe. Some people don't even think that it's a problem. It's not a problem until you are impacted. And so with that, Madam President, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Hearing none, then senators, the Senate stands adjourned until next week, Wednesday, 25th.